Welcome to the Outdoor Biz Podcast, where each Tuesday, your host, Rick Sayes, gathers around the mic with outdoor industry entrepreneurs, brand leaders, founders, and enthusiasts to share stories from the backcountry, the startup files, and the retail aisles. Rick's guests offer actionable advice to land your ideal industry gig, grow your outdoor career, or plan your next big adventure. Subscribe wherever you get your podcasts so you don't miss a single episode. And now, here's Rick.
Welcome to episode 353 of the Outdoor Biz Podcast, brought to you this week by The Running Event, the premier conference and trade show for run specialty retailers. Today I'm joined by D3 from Mystery Ranch. He got the keys to the kingdom as he takes on the role of Director of Product at Mystery Ranch. Welcome to the show, Dana.
Well, thanks for having me.
Yeah, this is very fun to talk to someone else in the Dana lineage about Dana packs and now Mystery Ranch packs. This is going to be a fun conversation. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, me too. It's a funny story when we get into it.
It is a long and tangled web, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So this might be an obvious question, but let's start with how you were introduced to the outdoors. Do you remember that first outdoor experience?
No, not even close. I have no idea. My father is famous for some of the early pack testing, throwing his kids in a pack and walking them around. I mean, just thinking about it longer and longer, it's like he would come grab us after he got done with work and we'd go hiking either up in the Bridgers or up in the highlight area around Bozeman. So there was a constant movement for us. Or in the winter, we had a cross-country park. Like one of the parks got groomed and we went cross-country skiing at the age of 3. So,
Wow.
So it was pretty early. And then we went downhill skiing around 5. And so I have no idea when or how.
That's
It's
awesome,
just been a constant lifelong thing.
Yeah, no, you got introduced right out of the gate. That's fantastic. So tell us about your unique path to the outdoor industry. That's kind of an interesting story, isn't it?
Oh, totally. So, a lot of where I started in it is, I grew up in the factory at Dana Design. It was very much when my mom needed a moment. I have a twin brother and older sister and younger sister. And when my mom really needed some time, she'd have my father take us. And we'd either go to an adventure or a road trip. But there were also a lot of times in which he was working on packs or new things. And so we'd go and play in the factory. I have that very weird distinction of having the smell of burning nylon webbing as very nostalgic for me. It just brings me right back to the good old days. So, I've been in the backpack making business for all of my life. And that meant early on in high school, I worked in the Dana Design warranty department, taking apart people's stinky, destroyed, beat up packs, which was its own life learning lesson. And after Dana left Dana Design, he had years of doing prototyping in which he'd always bring my brother and I in to cut fabric and foam and plastic and help him with things. Yeah, it was really an adventure on, before getting out of school, it was a real adventure. And then, when we moved into, out of high school, I had a big dream of, saving enough money, moving to Portland and having a good time. I was very much knew myself and wanted to go live in a city for a couple years, and also knew myself enough to put off college for a few years because I was going to be screwing around and having a good time, which at the time seemed, wise-ish, opposed to a lot of my friends, which jumped in and ended up doing the 5 or 6 year program in college and paying for it. But 3 months into actually being at Mystery Ranch, Dana Renee actually ran out of working capital. They ran out of money. And so they laid off the entire factory, including my brother and myself at the time. And a couple weeks in, for me, I was like, okay, I guess that sucks. I'll get a construction job and continue to save up. And, it was the summer after high school. So it was a lot of mountain biking and screwing around and hiking and having a good time with friends. And so I didn't think much of it. But a couple weeks in, father came to my brother and myself and was like, okay, so this is the deal. This is where we're at, is that his house, my mother's house, they were split. And my business partner, Renee, all had their houses on mortgage and they were going full startup mode. And that if they couldn't pull this off and get things working again, they were going to lose everything. So Dana asked my brother and myself, since we had been in it for so long, if we could give him a year. And by what he meant is like live at his house and, not get paid and really just put everything back into the business to build it back up again. And, since we had done a lot of different work, I'd never really done much industrial sewing, but I'd done some sewing. But he kind of put us into this path of, okay, we're going to figure out plan B. And plan B was get a bunch of stuff built in China in that first round. And we're going to go, bring it back and try and do it the way that everyone else does it. Because, the original Mystery Ranch was really built around we're going to be like Dane Design, but better, because I know all the things now, and
build in the U.S. and
built in the U.S., built right. It's just, everything's going to be great. And I have money to do it now. And of course the market changed, and that was like a huge problem. The same year that Mystery Ranch launched was when the original ultralight movement really happened.
Oh yeah. Go Light.
Yeah. So that's like when Go Light launched the same year. And so that was the big new thing. And everyone was going that direction, and an expensive, heavy U.S. made pack was, the worst customer fit you could imagine, right? For what would happen with the market.
Yeah, it shifted completely,
Yeah, so we worked hard on figuring out what were the next steps, and my brother and I came back in and started to work full work weeks and even longer into the weekends to get things together to ship the orders that they had and generate some cash. And this all lasted for 17 months before they had enough to pay my brother and myself. There was a handful of people at the ranch at that point. It was super tight days. It was very much that startup culture. It was
good for you guys, though. I mean, you pulled it off. I mean, that's a lot of pressure too, and you're working under pressure. This has to work.
This has to work.
No plan B, folks.
Yeah, there was nothing around it. But yeah, we put a lot of work into getting that stuff built internationally.
Did you guys actually go to Vietnam?
Well, at that point, it was going to China. It was not Vietnam. I didn't. Dana did. So he went, he supervised production. We got the designs done. And then, he came back and he's like, okay, it's coming. So now we need to sell it. And we didn't really have a rep force. So he brought myself, another guy who's been at the Mystery Ranch for 20 years now, Luke Buckingham, who's our director of operations now. And he brought us into a point where it's like, okay, guys, this is how you sell backpacks. This is how you be a rep. And he brought both Luke and I on different trips. I did the Northwest, where we jumped in the van and we rolled around to different shops. And he taught me the long and the short of how you do it, what you look for, and how you get people into it, how you service a different shop and make sure that we're showing up properly. So we started that, and this is back how he did it with Dana Design in the late 80s and early 90s. And you got a place
I saw him a couple of times at the old Adventure 16 down in San Diego. He came through a couple of times, I think. Yeah,
absolutely. So he was like, this is the way it's done. We're going to do it the old school way. And then he, the next trip that had to go out, he gave me $500 and a credit card in his name, and was like, great, go do it. You're on.
Wow. That's awesome. So, and how many styles did you guys have at that point?
Oh, let me think. We had the original Mystery Ranch system, which was the large, heavy duty frame, like the modular frame system. And that one we had 6 styles and 2 day packs. And then we had a more internal frame system, which is actually kind of the basis of where a lot of our original hiking packs were built, and also our military packs, which were called the automatics. We had 5 styles, and then we had 4 day packs called the monkey packs.
That's right. I remember those. Right. Yeah. Very cool. Yeah. So what was your route? I mean, did you cover the whole Northwest, and what was your typical sales route in those days? Do you remember?
Typical sales route. So the first year I had the Northwest, which meant I was covering Montana, Idaho, Washington, and Oregon. So it would usually be rolling up through Idaho, going down into Washington, and I'd stay with my sister in Seattle, or I'd almost always just be either sleeping in the back of the van or finding a place to bivvy, or maybe I'd have someone at a shop take pity at me, and I'd find a place to crash and on a couch. So just rolling through, I'd go down from Seattle, hit Portland, go down that 5 corridor all the way down to Ashland and then back up to Bend. Yeah, it was great. And it was a lot of time on the road and it was really beautiful. But the next real thing that happened after that is the year after, they're like, great, you can do Northern California too. So I started to do huge loops, 3 weeks at a time on the road, just trying to hit everyone and make sure everyone was taken care of.
That's awesome. Well, what a great learning experience and life experience. I think those days are, I don't know if they're completely gone. I don't know if reps do that a lot these days, but it's changed a lot. Those were the heyday. Those were the original founding days of the outdoor biz. That's awesome. Good for you.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it was the swan song of doing it that way.
Yeah.
The way you build a brand now is, you go through a direct-to-consumer model online and you find your customers and you build an audience on a couple of small pieces and, you go from there. And that's been really successful for a number of brands. But, yeah, you're not going straight to wholesale until you have a real audience and people asking for it.
Yeah, you have a proven concept, yeah. So obviously your design chops are basically in your genes because you learned in the shop. Did you ever take any formal design or production education?
No, never any formal production education. I had at the very beginning, like on those periods, right after everyone got laid off, like sewing training from Renee, Dana's partner. And, we went through and we had to finish a bunch of bags that were partially built when the layoffs happened. And so that was the production education. And we did training on sewing and cutting and all the different aspects to make sure that we're getting those things done. And then the larger design training actually came a couple years later. I had moved into a point where we were not doing great with wholesale dealers, and really like what we had found is, we had poor customer product fit when you were looking at Mystery Ranch and the early aughts. And really what we were doing is as we were building stuff, we had things still being made in the United States that were super specialty stuff. And we had the SEALs up in Kodiak Island come to us. And they've been buying design astroplanes for years and years. And, every few years they'd be buying hundreds of them. And it was good, solid business. And that was actually where the design astroplane overkill happened, is that was their pack. And it was just offered commercially. But at a point, Ding Design was, at that point, rolled up into K2 on Fashion Island.
That's when I got joined the team. Yeah, it was quite a roller coaster, let me tell you.
Quite a roller coaster. And there was just, the guy who was at SEAL team doing the procurement, he went to Dana Design and said, hey, can we get our normal shipment of backpacks? And they were like, yeah, we can't do that. We're not really interested in getting anything built in the United States again.
Yep.
So, they didn't have the resources at that point either. So they came to us and we were super hungry. So we were like, 800 packs? Yes, sign us up.
Yeah,
we're
exactly.
in.
Yeah.
So we started to go through and we found more and more military customers that were working really well for us. And that was really pushing us. So I was either on the road or working in the factory helping get stuff built at that point and pushed through. As this continued to evolve, we found more and more like we would want to take one of those bags and launch it as a recreational version. So we did the G5000, G6000, G7000, which were our Glacier Terraplane, Astroplane variations.
Makes total sense, yeah. Mm-hmm.
And they were U.S. made, and we were still selling in the shops, and it was soul crushing. It was so hard because I would be on the road, and I would get people signed up, and we'd get things delivered. And there was one particular instant where I was occasionally doing customer service. My mantra my mantra still is I need to do whatever the ranch needs me to do to make it work. So there were points in which I was doing customer service, direct sales work on the phones, and people would call up and like, hey, I really want to buy this G5000 from you. I really want to buy it. Can we figure this out? And we had stock, but it was all committed to the dealers.
Oh, right.
And the dealers were sitting on, wanting to have that stock. They bought pre-seasons. We built it for them. It's there. But we had nothing to sell direct at different points. And so I would end up calling the different shops and trying to find someone who had that style, that color, that size, and then hook the customer up with that shop.
That makes sense.
But it just became like a real difficult thing to do, like to know that like you were putting this much work into getting this pack sold for someone who really wanted the backpack, was going to extra length to get our gear. The shops were just playing, catcher's mitt to take half the margin on that.
Right. That's tough.
And so we started to look at, do we continue to do wholesale? And at that point, with all the US stuff, we have to stop doing this. So I moved into being full-time on manufacturing. I was at one point leading the floor, and then I moved into a cutting position. And the cutting position, we took the patterns and we drew on paper and then laid out many layers of fabric, put the paper on, stapled it, and then you cut it out with a fabric saw, right? And Dana was the only designer at that point. He was doing the president role. He was doing a lot of the sales role. He was doing the design role. And Dana is amazing, but he's also not the most fastidious of designers. And so there'd be symmetry problems, or he'd be like, it's borrowing this bag's and this other bag's body panel and this other bag's back, bottom.
Doesn't quite fit right.
Have that note, and it would not quite fit right, but also like, be pulling other pattern sets apart, which were all paper patterns at that time. And so I started to learn how to design by just merely copying patterns, creating patterns from scratch, correcting symmetry and fit issues. So I kind of became what was the original developer for Dana. I took his patterns, I built one version, I corrected the patterns, any problems, built the BOM, got the whole thing done, and then cut it for production. So that's, my design jobs are really in the just cleaning up after Dana.
But that's great. I mean, that's hands-on training. That's great training. That's, field combat training. That's awesome. Yeah. That's, you really, you learn by trial and error. So you just got a new role too. I don't want to mess up the title of that. What's your new role now?
I'm now director of product. So I'm ahead of all the recreational and all the mission-based products. So that's the firefighting and the military work.
So what's it feel like to get the keys to the kingdom?
Honestly, at every single point, it's super sad. It's so important.
Yeah.
Well, this all kind of came into, I became the product manager partially because it's what the ranch needed me to do. I was living in California doing independent design for the ranch. I was doing just ranch design. It was really fun. It was interesting work. I had followed a woman there, and we were in the Bay Area, and my father had a heart attack, and it was really bad. He had a triple bypass. It was really scary for a lot of us. And there was that whole problem of, well, what happens when Mr. Ranch if Dana dies?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And there was this whole path of well, we either need to sell it or we need to figure out the next steps for bringing someone in the family in, or who steps in after Dana. And I was the one who was very adamant, no, I'm going to move into that role and I'm going to help progress Mr. Ranch into the next field. But, I couldn't do that as a designer. So there was a level of, okay, I'm moving back to Bozeman. I'm going to take the product manager role, and I'm going to let go of the design stuff, which was, always super fulfilling and interesting and really great for me. But I needed to step up and grow up.
Yeah. Well, you still have some influence over design, though, I would think, as a product manager.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, but it's very different than exploring shapes and doing the pattern work and building a sample.
Right.
I have to sneak in on the weekends if I want to design or build any bags or even do some sewing personally.
Right. So I'm assuming, though, that overall things won't change much, will they? You're going to keep doing the same. You head down the same path, same products.
Oh, absolutely. But we have, my project manager side, I had all kinds of big, crazy ideas for the next 5 years. And so we've passed that off, or I've passed that off to a new product manager. He just started a couple weeks ago, and he's going to be doing a fantastic work. But yeah, he's, I don't know how he feels about the whole
Is he drinking from the fire hose right now?
Yeah, definitely. And having to step in behind me and be like, no, this is your line, but also I'm watching, and don't hurt my baby.
Right. Yeah. So durability and functionality have always been two common themes at Mystery Ranch and Dana Design Products before that. I'm assuming you'll continue those initiatives, right?
Oh, 100%.
Yeah,
I mean,
cool.
That's built into
That's the DNA.
higher DNA.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, everything we do in terms of our manufacturing and design process is, you still have the designers and the developers in the product room. They have a computer on one side and right behind them is a sewing machine. They're going through and doing the actual manufacture and build out of any product that we make. So we're, integral into like knowing how things work and how things are going to fail and how to build it correctly. So there's no mystery and no mystery in any of our packs when we know how it's going to perform. We've taken any pack out and developed the framing. We go up into the Bridgers and either have a quick day hike or we'll do, going south here, a couple overnights in any pack. And we get, super quick turnaround feedback on what's working and what doesn't. And because we're doing all the design development in-house, it makes it really easy for us to make those modifications and get to that next level and really have something super developed. That's a hard question. I mean, I have all kinds of crazy ideas and new products that I'd like to do. But for the most part, like on the hunting side, we just expanded into whitetail hunting, which is got a whole different set of parameters, which are important to those users, right?
Right.
There are things where it's like we had to take and develop special fabric that was going to meet our very high fit for use standards of durability, and also do things that we had never done before. We had to actually get a number of programs and specialty microphones to go through and measure like what decibels were put off when you scratched a fabric.
Yeah, it's got to be silent, right?
Yeah, exactly. It has to be very quiet. And also like what frequency range does it have sound at? Because, it's going into like the science of what do deer hear in the forest and making sure that it doesn't sound like anything or it's very quiet if it is in the range that they can hear very well. That
must have been fun.
So it was super fun. It was super great. And we got a really nice fabric developed for it. But it's just launched. Yeah, the whole series just launched this summer and it's been going really well. And we've got extension on that for a number of different products and accessories coming over the next 3 seasons. So I'm super excited about that. That's always new challenges, new users, new difficulties. And
that's always fun.
Absolutely.
We're going to take a little break and give some love to our sponsor, the running event. I'll be heading to Austin, Texas this November 29th through December 1st for the running event, and I hope you'll join me. If you're unfamiliar with the running event, also known as TRE, it's an annual conference and trade show that brings together performance brands like Brooks, Hoka, and Garmin with local running stores from across the U.S. and even globally. It's a great opportunity for these brands and retailers to connect and check out the new products. What I'm really excited about, though, is that this year, TRE is expanding into the outdoor industry with a brand new space called Switchback. I'm going to let TRE Event Director Christina Henderson share a little more.
Hey, thanks, Rick. I'm glad you'll be joining us at TRE this year. So obviously, the running event has always been really focused on running retailers and brands. But especially over the last few years, we're seeing the lines blur between run and outdoor industries. Trail running and hiking have grown tremendously, and we're seeing companies like Ultra and Nike putting a lot of focus into their trail lines. TRE has always had a lot of brands that sell into outdoor specialty, but Switchback marks the first time we're truly dedicating a space at TRE to connect run and outdoor specialty.
Well, I'm looking forward to checking it out this year. If you're interested in heading to Austin for Switchback at TRE, you can find the link to registration in the show notes and use code OutdoorBizTRE. That's OUTDOORBIZTRE for special discount pricing. And if you're curious about exhibiting at the event, reach out to Christina. Her email is chenderson@divcom.com. That's CHENDERSON, and that'll also be in the show notes. See you in Austin.
Mystery Ranch has been around now for 20 years. Tell our listeners, what do you think drives the longevity of the brand? It's just the continuing heritage of quality and bomber product. Is it that, or is it something more than that?
Oh, I mean, it is that definitely with the heritage and quality, but I live a very blessed life. I get to make backpacks for a living. I love it.
Right.
And I think most people, when they come to the ranch and they work for the ranch, especially the people who really stay, it's that they love making equipment, and they love making equipment for users where it makes a real difference. We want to make something that, especially on the mission side, like the wildland firefighting tools, any of those bags, they are tools. They are not something to go recreate in. People are requiring that to survive.
Yeah, I was going to say life-saving tools in a lot of cases.
Absolutely. And so, they require that lasts, and, because they're depending on everything that they need for that day or even a week to last out of that bag. And they're working hard to, dig ditches and move line. So, when we look at what we're doing, it's all about making sure that things last really, really well and don't fail in the field. That's paramount for us.
That's always been one of the main mantras. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. And what are you guys doing to reduce the impact of the production of packs on the world?
Well, the production of packs, it's both the quality guidelines that we do and the way that we make the product really durable. But we've also been going through and doing programs to make sure that we are using either materials that have a low footprint in terms of the manufacturability and what that takes for either energy consumption or water consumption. I think it's around 9 times more water to dye polyester than it is nylon. So there's ways in which it's like making sure that we use as much nylon as we can, even though it's more expensive. It does have better durability, which means it's going to last, but it's also more, it's a little more difficult to use in a couple other ways. And also moving into using a lot more pre-consumer recycled nylons. That's one of the bigger things that we've been doing recently. We didn't jump into just using recycled materials when they first came into the market because they were all post-consumer. They were recaptured and recycled pop bottles. And while that's a great story and looks really fantastic that, you're doing something with all that waste, there's a lot of impurities in that plastic, and it takes a lot of energy and water and to go through and change that trash back into the chemical, the polyester, the PET, to the point where it can be respun into fiber. And so there's a tremendous amount of degradation. I like to think about on that a lot of, it's garbage in, garbage out for a lot of different recycled PET fabrics. It's really, really weak stuff. So we've been really blessed by being able to get into programs that are recycled nylon that are basically waste from factories, and we're talking about the mills. Mm-hmm. So what most people don't really think about is that the 900-pound gorilla, when it comes to Kadura or any other nylon, is either airbags, which there's a tremendous amount, or there's carpeting. You think about the amount of nylon that goes into a single house and compare that against a production lot of backpacks. There's a lot more in that. And so there's when any of that stuff gets actually woven and created in the factories, there's always the heads and the tails of the material. There's the edge trimmings. That's all waste that was just going into landfills. And that was a tremendous amount. I mean, it's crazy to think how much waste was really just being thrown away, how much good material. And that's material that when it's being processed, it doesn't have any coloring on it. It doesn't have any coating on it, which means it actually takes a lot less work, less water, less energy, fewer chemicals to go through and bring that material back to the point where it can be extruded as fiber again. Mm-hmm. So it's a lot cleaner. It's a lot more effective and energy efficient. And you're not having to factor in the collection and movement of all this stuff back to processing plants. So it's a closed loop recycling system. And that's the most important thing. And the reason that we really love this is that it's got the largest impact by far on how do you recycle things and make it work for everyone and make it so you're really reducing the impact on the planet.
Yeah, and our processes and that whole recycling, category, recycling activity, are getting a lot better than they were when it first started. And we're able to clean some things up pretty tightly now, which is great.
Absolutely. Yeah.
All kinds of, what about buckles and things? Are you able to use recycled materials for buckles and stuff?
Recycled material and buckles isn't there yet. Getting into most buckles that are really durable are made out of palm. You can also make them out of a nylon, and that you can get a recycled nylon, but it's a lot weaker to have a buckle made out of nylon. It actually has to be thicker, and the material itself is stiffer, and so it's harder to actuate the buckles when you're looking at them.
Brittle.
We've looked at that before, but where there's actually really big movement and where we're going to in future seasons is palm is made out of natural gas and, or methane more specifically. And when you're looking at how you can capture that methane, there are a lot of different companies that are starting to make POM out of recaptured methane from landfills.
Yeah.
So that's where we're going with buckles at this point to help reduce greenhouse gases going into the atmosphere. So, that all the methane that it would be waste is getting recaptured. That's
what
getting
about
cracked.
pastures? Can they recapture methane from all the pastures? There's a bunch of pastures around here in Bishop that's, I'm assuming just oozing methane from all the cattle that they run on.
If they invested in the actual methane capture, absolutely.
Yeah, that'd be huge. Yeah,
that's like a supply and demand thing, right? There hasn't quite been the demand for all that methane, but as we continue down this path, it's a great way to completely remove any kind of fossil fuels from this process.
Yeah, very cool. And we also got to get off of our hamburger fix. There's so much beef around.
It's true. It's a bit ridiculous in the way that the agricultural system is all built around making cheap beef.
Burgers,
it's a waste.
Right. It's crazy. Yeah. Let's shift gears a little bit. What outdoor activities do you participate in? Do you get out?
I would say in most years, yes. I almost always do overnights. That's like my usual weekend was doing an overnight either solo or with friends and doing week-long trips through a couple of different ranges. My heart is really for two ranges right now. It's either the Beartooth or the Wind River range. But all that said, I keep on saying is that I have a 5-month at home.
Yeah.
I have a little boy, so I've taken advice from another friend, and I was told very succinctly, you need to make sure you're taking care of not just him, but your relationship with your wife if you want that to last. Yeah. So sometimes that happens. And I've talked with a couple of people that one who's a hardcore climber, and one of the things he said is yes, I've traded 100 big wall climbs to make this investment in my child's future. And he's like, it's worth it every single day.
Absolutely. Good for you. That's awesome. That's good to hear.
So there's always next year.
Yep. Always. There's plenty of time. I mean, you don't want to let the time go by because they grow up fast. I'm speaking from inexperience. I've never been married, don't have kids, but from all the friends I've seen, it just makes sense to get them out early and, nurture those relationships because they go by so quick. Yeah. Cool.
That said, I have a new backcountry setup, so
cool.
I'm definitely itching to go.
There you go. It'll happen soon. Do you have any suggestions or advice for folks that may want to get into the outdoor biz?
I don't know. There's the cliche, follow your passion, but I think it's more along the lines of can you make that product customer fit really work? Can you find how what you're doing is going to be important for someone? And that's where you're going to really make that bigger jump. People always look at, this is a huge opportunity. Look at how well the North Face is doing, or Nike's selling a bunch of backpacks, or there's different groups being like, all I need to do is capture 1% of this market, and I will be doing fantastically well. But I think that misses the point in terms of how do you actually get to a point that you're getting to that share, is that you need to find the people, those early adopters who really care about what you're doing and really want to support you in building that product.
Mm-hmm. That's true. Yeah. You got to get people on early. Otherwise it's a long slog. It's a long slog either way, actually.
You're probably going to run out of money before you get to the long slog.
That's true. You might. Yeah, you're right. What's your favorite outdoor gear purchase under $100?
under $100, that one's hard. I'm all about buying quality, and I like buying custom things from people and saving up and buying it once. But under $100, like, favorite, that's hard because, immediately I'm thinking like, well, I love really well done wool socks, and I have, that to me is like, that's the perfect thing to, spend more on. I'm spending $25 on a really good pair of wool socks that are well made. Mm-hmm. And, those will last me years and years and years and years.
Mm-hmm. That's a good one. I don't think anybody's ever had that answer yet. That's awesome.
That's ridiculous, really.
Well, it's kind of a kitschy question, right? It's kind of made that enlisted a lot of different answers. And I think now it's interesting how I've been doing this now for 5 or 6 years. Mm-hmm. And over those 5 or 6 years, only in the last couple of months has the answers to those questions shifted to more quality focused, more, geez, that is kind of cheap. I'm not sure I want to buy something that cheap. So it's interesting to hear people thinking that way now, whereas early on it was, people would throw out, and they weren't flippant answers, but there were a lot of simple answers. So I'm glad to see that that's
totally
shifting gears. Yeah. If you could have a huge banner at the entrance to one of the outdoor shows, what would it say?
Outdoor shows like OR?
OR or, Big Gear Show, whatever, one of the outdoor shows, any of the outdoor shows, actually.
I feel like, honestly, it would have to be something like, we're still relevant. I mean, it's hard because, COVID really shifted how we look at getting to the consumers and getting product to people. That a lot of that moved to regional rep shows as being super effective. And we haven't seen that change at this point. Some of those different regional rep shows had kind of been, on their last legs and really evaporating, but COVID really brought them back. And there's that larger question of, what do we need outdoor retailer for on the sales side?
Yeah.
On the development side, it's fantastic. It's among the best places to
still
actually
the place to go. Right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, go see technical materials, the hot, the new, the great products that are being done by mills. That's the time that all those different Asian manufacturers are, shooting to bring stuff to market for us. And
that show landscape is shifting a lot.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. As we wrap up, is there anything else you'd like to say to or ask of our listeners?
Let's see here. What would I want to ask? I mean, I'm always about listening and hearing more about like how people are using gear and where, we as a group could improve their experience. I constantly want to make something better, something that works effectively, simply, and lasts a lifetime.
Mm-hmm. As we wrap up, is there anything else you want to talk about or say? I appreciate talking with you. It's great to catch up, and I look forward to seeing you at a show again soon.
Yeah, I look forward to seeing you as well. I don't have anything right now. It was really fantastic to talk with you.
Yeah, good to hear your story directly from your perspective and your mouth. It was great I've heard all the details and things, and I think we've only met a couple times at trade shows, so thanks for sharing that with everybody. I appreciate it.
Yeah, it's my pleasure.
Awesome, Dana. Thanks. I will be in touch, and we'll talk soon.
Definitely.
Cool.
Take care.
Thank you for joining us on another episode of the Outdoor Biz Podcast. Be sure to visit our website, theoutdoorbizpodcast.com, where you'll find show notes with links to everything we talked about and more. Subscribe wherever you get your podcasts so you don't miss a single episode. And while you're at it, if you found value in this show, we'd appreciate a rating on iTunes. Or spread the word and tell a friend about the show. That would really help us out too. Be sure to tune in every week. And thanks again for listening to the Outdoor Biz Podcast with Rick Sayes.